You know what? I'm a big fan of Star Wars, as is Philip. I'm aware.
It's true. It's true.
And I'm a big fan of where we're at today. And I kind of left it for a little while, and Philip did not.
It's true also.
So
Colin keeps
today,
telling true things.
I can't tell a lie. It's just not anymore. Anyways, I don't have the energy for it.
I mean,
Anyway, so what we're going to do today is we're going to discuss one of the main ways that Star Wars got to where it is on the debut episode of I Never Got Into That. We're going to get into Star Wars: The Clone Wars. For those of you that don't know, my name is Colin, also known on the internets as Sorry BTR, and this is my dear friend.
I'm Philip. I guess sometimes Summerhawk on the internet, but mostly just Philip.
If you find him as
various places.
Summerhawk on the internet, you searched very, very hard.
Technically, I'm on Twitter.
That's true. He does.
I think
he doesn't
never
like our
tweeted.
show's. He doesn't like our show's Twitter page. By the way, he is not following the show's Twitter page. I'm bringing this up because I wonder if it'll be true come episode 2. This is
The app is actually not on my phone. The Twitter app.
I
Does
called
not
that
exist
on my stream
phone.
today. On my stream today, I said I don't even think he has the app installed. He only ever signed up in order to be able to get keys for Borderlands.
That is correct. That is correct. I think I follow like 3 things on Twitter, and I don't actually remember what all of them are. But I think I have followed like 3 things on Twitter. But you're absolutely right. I signed up for Twitter to get golden keys on Borderlands.
If this was a live stream, I would 100% pull it up just to joke about it right now. But we'll move forward with our intention here of getting into Star Wars Clone Wars. I'll start as we discuss personal exposure because for me, it's 0. It's 0.
Yeah.
I watched the movie in 2003, shortly after it came out, and because I was like freshly into college when I saw it, I had that super collegiate air of this is for kids. Mm-hmm. This isn't for me. This isn't my Star Wars. So I never watched it.
I went opening night with Eric and Brad, and they did Star Wars trivia. Like there was a, I don't know if the 501st Legion was active yet then, but there were Star Wars cosplayers and there were Star Wars people, and they did trivia, and I won a ridiculously large X-Wing fighter toy.
Yes.
That I didn't know what to do with. I brought it home and I stuck it in the closet, and eventually I think I gave it away.
That sounds about right.
Or maybe sold it to a shop that resells stuff like that. But
I love that you won Star Wars trivia at a Star Wars premiere.
It's true.
That's high nerd status, bro.
I don't remember what I answered, but I answered something that won me that X-Wing. Yep.
So what was your exposure to the show? Because I kept my haughty attitude and didn't watch.
I, like you, didn't like the movie. And I think I still don't like the movie. I have rewatched the movie since. I have a daughter now, and so we rewatched the movie, and I've watched through the series with her. I eventually convinced my wife to try the series out, and she really likes it, and we've watched that together. But I still think I don't like the movie. It's disjointed. It feels like, frankly, it feels like it's a couple different arcs on the show, as opposed to a single coherent narrative. And I don't love that. It does a good job of presenting us Ahsoka Tano as a character that's going to be obviously a major focus of the series. But as a movie, I just didn't like it. And as a Star Wars movie, I didn't like it. It was not anything like Star Wars that I had seen. So it was
not my Star Wars.
It was a little. Yeah, it wasn't the Star Wars I wanted it to be. So when the show came out, because I had seen the anime shorts that they had put out shortly after in the lead up to episode 3 coming out, and those were really cool. Even though I'm not super into anime, it was really cool the way they did that, and it was interesting to see that as a lead-in, as a tie-in to a movie. I think that was probably my first like TV ties into movie thing. But yeah, I didn't really watch the show until it was a few seasons in, when I started to become aware of it, because it started the year I graduated college, and I didn't really notice it. And I don't think I had Cartoon Network when I first graduated college and was starting as a teacher. So I didn't have access to how to watch it for a couple of years. But I think I picked up with it maybe season 4, maybe a little later. It was well into it when I started. And my initial try at it, I also didn't like it much. And then I tried it again later, and it had clearly turned a corner. Like there's a clear turning point as you get into the seasons where it goes much more mature, and that was where I realized I like it. And now, having gone back and watched it with my family, I can better appreciate the early seasons, knowing where we're going, like knowing where we're taking these characters, and especially the character of Ahsoka, who develops into such a character that I dearly love now. Who's probably one of my favorite Star Wars characters at this point. And I can appreciate that early stuff more. And I can also appreciate it better. Honestly, a lot of things like that you get a lot more sympathetic to when you watch it with a child.
Fair.
Watching I guess we probably started watching it when she was 7 or 8. Watching my 7 or 8-year-old daughter watch through, and to her, young sassy Ahsoka Tano is the best thing ever. So that helps too.
Right. The youthful joy story that I'm sure will be referenced repeatedly here for me is seeing Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, still in the Lucas verse, I suppose, and hating it, absolutely hating it, except there was like a 10-year-old boy sitting next to me who through the entire movie went, whoa, at least a dozen times. And I was like, you know what? All right. They're hitting what they're going for, So
yeah,
I'm
all my
with you on
feelings
that.
about the sequel trilogy were affected by having my daughter sitting next to me, for the second two, at least, didn't for the first one. And that, especially with the third one, which in retrospect, I don't like very much, but she just thought it. Reyes was everything for Rose for a bit there. And so, yeah, seeing her enjoy it so much makes a lot of difference in appreciating in fighting against that sort of, well, this isn't my Star Wars thing. Seeing what I think is intentional, seeing the next generation get to take it over, and when it's your next generation getting to experience it for the first time, and you kind of think back to you were a little kid and you watched the classic series, and the plot of the classic series isn't really that much stronger if we're really honest with ourselves. So
This is true. And just to lay this out in episode 1 here, our intention with this, and the reason why I think Clone Wars made such great sense for Philip to present to me is we are setting out to be the opposite today of who I just described myself as having been in college. This thing is beloved, and the topics that we will explore in this show are as well. And the goal is to just find why. If this series isn't for you, then maybe this 1-hour podcast will at least give you an insight into why it is that thing for so many people. And at this point, as Philip has just laid out for us, for generations of Star Wars fans. So Because this is something that Philip is so much more in tune with, I'm kind of going to hand the first part over to him as he walks us through, because I'm new to this. In the research, I just discovered a name that should have meant something to me for more than a decade now, as I learned the name Dave Filoni. This man is entirely new to me, and the reason that I jumped at Philip presenting this topic is because I made a comment in passing at work that I was really enjoying The Mandalorian season 1. I'm behind. Don't at me, or do at me. INGIT at Twitter. Find us. And the question was raised to me like, oh yeah, so what do you think of the way it ties into Clone Wars? And I said, well, I never watched Clone Wars. And that's when you have to stop. Don't watch Mandalorian. You have to watch Clone Wars first. And so
Disagree.
when Philip, I would as well. I can understand someone's desire for me to have a completed experience or a deeper knowledge. I don't think I'm lacking going in.
But I think it works in reverse too. I think that's one of the brilliances of Star Wars in general, is that I think it works the other way too. I think if you watch The Mandalorian and then you watch The Clone Wars, you get to go, oh, that person's from The Mandalorian, and you still. I think the pleasure is still there. I don't think it's. I don't think it's reduced.
This has been a conversation with Star Wars in general. When people discuss what order should you show them, trilogy-wise, I don't know. Is there a bad way? Like,
I don't think so.
Consuming Star Wars' entire purpose behind the crawl at the start, or behind Clone Wars, when we last left our heroes, and that it's accessible. Just jump in, sit down, watch some Star Wars wherever you're at, wherever the story's at. And I think that is held true. But tell me why Dave Filoni is now who he is. Let's talk about the players that made Clone Wars happen and have shaped Star Wars since then.
So I mean, obviously George Lucas needs no particular introduction, because Star Wars.
If he does, how did he get here?
Yeah. You can work George Lucas out, but the prequel trilogy was in full swing, and we've just had the 2D animation series that's done on Cartoon Network that leads right up to the opening moments of Episode 3, which, if you've never seen that, I really recommend it. Like it's very cool. It's a very different kind of Star Wars. It's got a very anime feel to it. It looks, and I think the animation studio, I think it's the same animation studio that did Samurai Jack. So it's got that look to it. And it's really cool. And you get the introduction of General Grievous, and you get General Grievous as scary, as opposed to kind of the butt of a joke, which he kind of is in the movies and throughout the Clone Wars. And that's an interesting thing to see as well. And at one of the big cons, Lucas mentions that they're in process on working up a 3D animation series set in the Clone Wars. So fans know this is going to happen for a while before it actually does. And Dave Filoni had been working in animation for a while at this point. He'd worked a little bit on things like King of the Hill and Fairly Odd Parents and something called The Oblongs. But where he really,
You didn't watch The Oblongs?
Yeah. Not Fairly, I said Fairly Odd Parents. Kim Possible.
Even better.
Where he really landed, that got him noticed within people who were interested in animation, was Avatar: The Last Airbender. So he was working at Nickelodeon Studios and starts working on Avatar: The Last Airbender. And at the same time, he's just a gigantic Star Wars nerd. And I mean a deep Star Wars nerd. He, at one point, showed up for one of the premieres dressed as Plo Koon, who, if you haven't seen the Clone Wars, is really kind of no one. I mean, he's there in the Jedi Council in a couple scenes in the film, and he's cool looking, but that's really all there is to him. He's in he's in the background of the big fight at the end of episode 2. And he features in one PlayStation 1 era Star Wars game called Force Powers or something like that, and where you play as different members of the Jedi Council, and he's one of the characters. And I discovered him in that video game, and I thought he was awesome, and he became my go-to. No, that's the coolest Jedi, and it was exclusively because he has in that video game he has an amber-colored lightsaber, and I hadn't seen a color of lightsaber that wasn't red, green, or blue.
Right.
And I thought, or purple. You see purple with Mace Windu in the film. But I thought, that's really cool that we have this variety of lightsaber colors. And I liked the awesome, scary mask thing that he wears. And so me and Dave Filoni share a favorite member of the Jedi Council. And he's deep into it that way. He's that deep of a Star Wars nerd. He's doing cosplay. He's building his own lightsabers. That sort of thing. And apparently, and I watched an interview with him where he shared this anecdote. And he's at one point talking to one of his friends, and his friend's they're talking about how much they love their job on Avatar. And he said, "What would make you quit?" And Dave Filoni says, "Getting a call to work on Star Wars." I mean, that's what would make me leave. Getting a call to work on Star Wars. And it's very shortly thereafter that he gets a call and someone says, "Yeah, we're from Lucasfilm, and we want to bring you out to Skywalker Ranch to talk about working on a Star Wars animation show that we're going to get into." And he says that his first thought was he's now being pranked. This had gotten out, and he's like, and he thought it's the guys over at Ren and Stimpy. And
that's going to be my favorite part of the episode.
He decides that the funny thing to do would be to play along and see how long they can keep it up. And so he starts talking about, yeah, of course, absolutely, and getting into and he's going through a job interview. He doesn't realize it. He's going through his first job interview for Lucasfilm, thinking that he's stringing along someone who's pranking him. And so he goes into, well, I saw the Cartoon Network series, and that's not really the animation style I do. And they say, well, no, we're going to do 3D. He says, well, okay, I've also never done that. And so this goes on for a while. And then she says, all right, so the next step is you come out to Skywalker Ranch and you need to meet with George. And at this point, he says he became suspicious because stringing this along anymore is going to involve him driving out to Skywalker Ranch, and that might be a bridge too far. And so he's like, okay, really, who is this? I mean, this is really well executed, but honestly, at this point, it's kind of mean, you know?
Oh, buddy.
and the person on the other end says, this is Dave Filoni, right? Yeah. And you work at Nickelodeon Animation. Yes. And somewhere in here is when apparently it sinks into him that this is real. And so he said, wow. I just wanted to make sure I've got the right guy. And he starts immediately trying to backpedal and reassure her that yes, in fact, he's exactly the right guy. And you really want me to come to and apparently talking to the person who'd called him later, she told him, honestly, if we hadn't already set a date for you to come out to Skywalker Ranch, I would have just gotten off of the phone with you right then, because he's wild. so overdid it trying to sell himself to her, as he just nerded out way too much.
Both sides of that anecdote blow my mind, because as the hiring manager, I can't imagine someone at the 3/4 point being like, all right, now, but this isn't for real, right? And then imagining being in an interview and then getting nervous at the end and just only selling yourself for the last 10 minutes. That's wow. He was that close.
Yeah. Wow. And apparently, and when he tried to sell himself, it almost pulls the whole plug on the whole thing. So anyway, that works out. He goes to Skywalker Ranch, and apparently he gets a tour of the place, and then he's just in a room with George Lucas for a while they talk about Star Wars and what Star Wars means to George Lucas and what Star Wars means to Dave Filoni and the direction that George Lucas wants to take Star Wars. And he said that he walked out of it feeling like it had gone pretty well, that him and Lucas and he just felt really good about having met George Lucas and sat down with his interview. And so he's going to go home and he's going to go back to working on Avatar, and he's good. And of course, in reality, he'd gotten the job. So Dave Filoni gets the job because Dave Filoni is a Star Wars fan. Like he is a Star Wars fan on the level of the really passionate Star Wars fans. And I think that's why the Clone Wars works. Right. Is because it is essentially Dave Filoni getting to do, especially as it gets farther and he gets a little bit more of a free reign, it's essentially Dave Filoni getting to do Star Wars fan fiction.
Right.
But it's real. Right.
And that's, as we discussed, the disjointedness. And he was a part of the animated film, 2003?
Yeah, he's a part of the film. Mm-hmm.
So that if we take that knowledge going into it, I think I've got a little bit more understanding of why I don't like it, because that movie felt almost like too proud of being Star Wars, if that makes sense. Like it was a Star Wars playground, as opposed to, as you said, the Clone Wars series feeling like fan fiction. It got deeper into things. It explored things that the core films just touched on, and that's what we nerds love, is the deep knowledge. We love lore, and for him to get to create lore around something that we know and to fill in missing years, I mean, that's what we love about it.
You know, I know one of the things that a lot of Star Wars fans were really bummed out about was when the movies started to come back out, when we started to see the movies coming out again, Lucasfilms declaring that, okay, we've had the extended universe all this time, but we're now going to start categorizing that as legends, and all the rest of this is canon. There's canon and there's the legends. And I think one of the things that fans have loved about Dave Filoni's handling is he's obviously read well, maybe not all of, there's a ridiculous amount, but maybe. He's obviously read deeply into the extended universe, what is now Legends, and has started to pull things from that back into his universe. I mean, we see that in Rebels, he pulls in Grand Admiral Thrawn, who's obviously a huge fan favorite from the EU. In some of the later episodes of Clone Wars, he brings in characters like Revan from Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic.
KOTOR,
so his depth of love for Star Wars extends out into this idea of, I too was sad that these things are just legends now, but now I have some control over it and I can make some of them to be official again. So I think that plays a huge role. And the critical failure in the first movie, I think you've got a new filmmaker. I think you got someone who's been a TV person and now is doing a feature-length film. And I might argue, I mean, I'm not a film executive of any kind, but I might argue that it was just a bad idea to do a film to start.
Yeah.
That it would have been just better to just dive into a series, because I can imagine that film broken into a couple of different arcs worth of episodes getting to pace itself better and explore characters better and present things better. And
I think we're actually able, though, to look at it from the skewed perspective of the modern day, where we're so much more comfortable through Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Marvel on Netflix and things like that. And now we live in the Berlanti-verse as far as DC is concerned, to where we're okay with splitting things off. I mean, if they were to do it today, then they would have made that movie into a 6-episode special that they would have released onto a streaming platform.
Right.
And we'd have loved it. But for the time, I mean, we really weren't seeing that. That's 2003, we're still watching 24 and Alias on TV. TV and movies were very separated from each other.
Yeah. No, that's true.
I mean, Party of Five was on TV, y'all. Like, I was still watching the OC, and I love that show. I stand by it. I stand by it. So, how much would you say? Because the next thing to get into, I think, is the style. Before we dive into the story that is told, Clone Wars, if nothing else, had a style that wasn't like anything else happening at the time.
Yeah.
Is that Filoni's style? Was that a style that came from Lucas? Do we know the origins of that?
I'm not sure whether it's Lucas wanted to do this or Filoni wanted to do this, but I know that part of the production design was they took the animation from the anime shorts that were made and attempted to match the shape of the characters. And so these very exaggerated heads, this very angular shapes were all derived from those shorts that had been such a huge success among fans.
Right.
So that we really want that to feel like it's a part of this. We're just moving it into a CG medium, into a CG 3D medium. And then you get, I think, the thing that makes it so cool to look at, and one of the things that's beautiful about it, even as it evolves over time, because the style definitely evolves to be a little more photorealistic over time, is you can see, I like that you can see the brush strokes. Like, that's a really interesting animation style that it doesn't ever try to get you to forget that you're watching a cartoon. And I think that's one of the things that works well for it, is you are always very aware that you are watching something that is drawn, even if it's now drawn on a computer as opposed to by hand.
Looking at it from today, as I've done the research of watching not all, but a substantial chunk of the series, including what I found is being listed as the dramatic art shifts. I'm 100% with you. What I like and what struck me is that talking about those angles and edges in combination with brushstrokes, it's geometric painting is essentially what we're seeing animated for us, which is fascinating. And the geometry just gets stronger and stronger, and the angles sharper and sharper as it goes. I've got in my notes here from an interview where Filoni said that the evolution that happened in season 3 came simply from the art department's time spent together. They had spent enough time discussing Star Wars, drawing those characters, seeing the evolution that the writers were putting through, that they felt they knew each other well enough to tackle more challenging visuals. And that was including what I didn't recognize, but was apparently pretty groundbreaking water animations for TV animation at the time. That was the first of the big evolutions to the starter style that we're talking about. But then also season 7 was when they had a back to the drawing board, literally, meeting with the art department. And Filoni said that the intention here is that we acknowledge that our audience has grown up, as has our story, and we need to match that in our tone. And you can see that while 7 still has that clear-cut animation, they're not going for that uncanny valley. It is also color palette. It's a lot darker. Things that we lose, even with the absence of the narrator at the beginning, we lose a lot of the childlike innocence that the story had gone through. And so the show, as Ahsoka grows, because let's be honest, it's her show, as Ahsoka grows, as the events become more dire and the stakes become higher, so does the tone. The tone darkens to match. And I thought that was greatly illustrated through the art, matching what they were going for in the style, and it happening literally before my eyes as I marathoned through this show and was like, oh, so I mean, I know the timeline, but also if I were looking at this and I didn't know what was going down in episode 3, this is getting bad fast. Like we are in some serious stuff here. And I loved that, dude. I loved it.
I do too. I love the evolution. I love that the show grows up with its audience and with its main characters. I would argue it's Ahsoka's show. I would also argue it's Rex's show.
Yeah.
Because as the main clone that we get consistently, Rex also kind of grows up with us through alterations to his armor and his rank and that sort of thing. And then, of course, Rex is also carried forward into other series along with Ahsoka. But yeah, the way the characters grow up, and I really like that. I also like, especially with season 7, I think one of the things with season 7 is you get 2 things that they decide to do. And I think it's kind of, you have some actors who do the sort of, I do one for them and one for me. And I kind of feel like the one for them of season 7 is, all right, I need to set up the Bad Batch.
Right.
Which Filoni's involved in. It's not, I'm not saying he did that reluctantly, but I need to set up the Bad Batch. And then I need to resolve this chapter of Ahsoka's life and Maul's life. And so the latter half, that's all the Ahsoka and Mandalore stuff, it struck me as just this is a feature-length film that we have chopped up into episodes.
Yeah, 100%.
I would love to see released in theaters that set of episodes with the episode breaks just cut out, because I don't think there's anything that it would hurt. I don't think it would get hurt in any way by doing that.
It was really satisfying to watch the show tighten up from the animation cliches of the early season to where it's almost like a cartoon procedural. We're going here because we need to do this, but we're never actually going to get the bad guy. We're never actually, like, we're going to get close and we're going to meet a new bad guy that we can kind of get, but they have to get away because we know that they need this information to go to XYZ. And then to tighten everything up by season 7 and go, no, things are getting done. We are seeing resolution. And I found that fascinating. It's a perfect segue into talking about the second part here, which is our characters. Because, man, they tackle, I have a list here, some of the fan favorites that we don't necessarily need to get into because most everybody knows. We've obviously got Anakin, and if we haven't yet, spoiler alert, going forward. So be clear that we're going to talk all the way through what happens in season 7. So Anakin, and then wow, like I include Rogue One, seeing Darth Vader at the end picking up her saber, like that, just that's my favorite use of Vader outside the movies. Like outside the Skywalker saga films, hearing the breath, seeing the boots right before, like it hits you with that sink in your stomach of like, well, yeah, Anakin's gone. And Anakin is gone, and here's Vader, and it was a beautiful final moment for me of releasing Anakin, and everything is intentional. And so for me, my favorite little detail in that moment is that he doesn't pick her saber up with the Force. He knelt at the helmet and picked it up. And that to me was huge. You've got Obi-Wan, Padme, Mace Windu, Qui-Gon, who was still voiced by Neeson, Maul, Boba Fett, Palpatine, all of the favorites making great, not just appearances, but substantial contributions to this. It's characters that we know, which really helped fill out, and I'm just going to run through this list, and we can come back and talk about, or you can add on to any that I don't have here, the new characters that are the soul of the show. Obviously, Ahsoka. And then I've got Rex, Asajj, Cad Bane, and then for me, I've got to say, like, father, daughter, son were some characters that, while they're just there for their arc, were a brilliant moment of lore building and explanation of the balance of the Force, which is something that's talked about so often, and getting to see it and watch it fail was just such a heartbreaking and beautiful thing done in the show. what is it that stands out in these characters for you, or things that they did differently, maybe?
I think one thing that they do so well in this series that's not explored as thoroughly in the films, partly just from a lack of time, but whether we're talking about the originals or in the prequels or even in the sequels, I think they explore the actual deep moral dilemmas involved in being a Force wielder and particularly being a Jedi, because we really don't get in any of the films the notion, we don't get shades of gray,
Right.
you know. It's all or nothing, because you've got to be on the light side or the dark side, and people and characters can fall back and forth across that boundary, but you're either light side or you're dark side. Whereas in the cartoons, we get a very sympathetic Anakin. In fact, I've heard one, speaking of orders to watch this in, one, I think, slightly joking suggestion is that after your kids see episode 2, you make them watch the Clone Wars so that they fall thoroughly in love with Anakin. And only then do you let them watch episode 3 to maximize the heartbreak of Anakin's fall.
That's just hurtful.
He is so much more sympathetic in the Clone Wars than he is in any of the series, because you have time to explore. Yeah, he is. He is a lot
intelligent.
He's written a lot more intelligently.
He's important in the movies, but outside of just being the chosen one, I thought that the Clone Wars did a great job of showing why. I mean, you know, and especially in the first 2 seasons, every time that you hear Obi-Wan, like, what is he doing? Anakin knows. He is an incredibly skilled risk assessor. Like, he knows that his teeth are going to have a little bit of skin shaved off, but they're going to pull it off. And that intelligence really made it so much more valuable every time he gave those knowing looks to Ahsoka. Because, why did you doubt me? And it was almost like looking at me and I go, oh, yeah, I mean, I get why everyone believed in you now. Like, I'm with you.
Well, and I love you get that wonderfully acted climactic moment in episode 3 from Ewan McGregor, where he's screaming his Shakespearean monologue at Anakin. And he sells it because he's a great actor, but within the context of the Clone Wars, of the Clone Wars series, at the end of the Clone Wars series is so much more, it just hits. Like the you were my brother, you were, like, that is so much more powerful to me, because we get to see that relationship and the wonderful chemistry that is created by those voice actors.
So good.
It's just great. And I like seeing both of them influencing Ahsoka. We get to see Ahsoka grow up sort of balanced between Anakin's boldness and Obi-Wan's cleverness. We get to see Rex kind of develop along the lines of Anakin, and occasionally we see Cody, who's much more by the book, which is a little more Obi-Wan. So I think we create a really nice foil for these two characters, while still really selling them as very close, loving friends.
Right. Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I've always kind of been a Hayden apologist. I didn't ever hate Anakin in the movies. A little dry.
I don't think it's Hayden Christensen, because I've seen Hayden Christensen act, and I know Hayden Christensen can act. I think there's just some very choppy dialogue written.
Somebody
maybe
told
it's something
him
to do with editing, or something happened.
Somebody wrote on a book or on a page, I have to have you say the words, "I hate sand." Like, how much are you supposed to do with that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, how convincing am I supposed to be? Yeah, I mean, it sucks to get dirty with sand, but who actively? Anyway, I'm memeing on it, and I hate that so much. But I thought as well, to back up the Obi-Wan half of that scene, like, to me, every time there was a great moment in Clone Wars between Anakin and Obi-Wan, I just thought of Hayden's visceral scream when he's told, just surrender, Anakin. I have the high ground. And that look on his face, that is every single human emotion portrayed at once. It just broke my heart that he's looking at Obi-Wan and making that sound. And the movies made it hurt, but the Clone Wars really deepened that bond. And it even further, to me, explained why Obi-Wan continued on to be the man that he was after that. The sense of duty-bound responsibility to go live on the desert planet for the rest of his life.
And you look at like what Alec Guinness says about Anakin to Luke, like what Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan says about Anakin to Luke, that just sort of fond little smile that he's got. He's a cunning warrior, a great starfighter pilot, and a good friend. And like, it's just, it's so meaningful when you have context for that relationship. So I think that's just one of the beauties of this show. But I think what's also really cool, speaking of that sort of thing, is we get the same depth to the other side. I mean, we still have kind of mustache-twirling villains, right? I mean, Grievous and Dooku and Palpatine remain the villains that we're just supposed to hate.
Yep.
But even though she's initially that way, Asajj Ventress turns into a character.
Yeah.
That you can feel some sympathy for over the course of the series, and gets her story concluded in a book after the series concludes, where she's teamed up with other fan favorite Quinlan Voss of the Jedi Council, or not of the Jedi Council, but of the Jedi, and actually presents her as a final. It gives her a final, since we're spoiling things. It gives her a final redemption arc, which is
good,
which is cool.
You can see that was in there.
Yeah, you can see her evolution away from. Well, you can see where she becomes a Sith, and I really like that in her. That we get her backstory, we see how she became where she is, and how she would fall into that. That it's not, and you're presented with this idea always of the Sith as just evil,
right.
or having fallen into hubris or something like that. Whereas it's also, or what about this girl who's essentially kidnapped and taught nothing but hate?
Right.
And you can imagine you can imagine Ahsoka. I think she's a wonderful foil to Ahsoka, because you can imagine, what if the wrong person had found Ahsoka and taken her. You can easily imagine her turning into Ventress. And then, of course, Ahsoka ends the series not a Jedi, not a Sith.
Right, right.
And
boy,
and get that balance. We get our first real neither character.
Yeah.
That
was something that stood out to me as I learned mythology prior to this. You've got light side, dark side, and then the gray side. And I was like, well, that's just made up. That's not shown anywhere. Yeah, maybe it's what we would like to have, but that doesn't exist anywhere, because in the mustache twirling world you described, they were always kind of presented as bad guys because they're bad,
Yeah.
And this show provided some justification from their end. You don't have to buy it, but you can buy that they do. You can see why they are who they are.
And then I would argue the climax of Filoni's brilliance in terms of making us feel for characters has got to be Maul.
Yeah, oh man. If you would have told me, after seeing the movies, that there would come a time where I celebrated watching him be released from captivity, I'd have gone, no, he's cutting people like in half over here. No shot will I ever celebrate that. What a great job with him. And
yes.
Not to jump too far ahead, because it's the future topic, but good Lord, Sam Witwer, as the voice for Maul. I've been a fan of his, but I just want to say that now while we're on Maul. We'll come back to that. But wow.
Well, and
so good.
It proceeds from there. I mean, Maul has a role in Rebels, where we see a furtherance of that arc of. And again, Maul becomes the foil to Ahsoka in Filoni's mind, I think, because Maul also, by the end, is not Sith and not Jedi.
Right.
And by the time we meet him in Rebels, he's not a servant of the Emperor in any way at all. He's his own. He's an entirely free agent, Force user, just like Ahsoka. But they're following very different paths.
Right.
But you get both sides, and I really like that Filoni explores that area between the light and the dark.
So as we talk about the areas in between, let's talk about the two characters who we both agreed the argument could be made for them being the basis for the show. We've got Rex, who is our clone hero, and Ahsoka. And man, I was surprised by growing attached to Rex. I really enjoyed that character, because when you tell me on paper that a character is going to be a clone, then I don't expect any one of those characters to be written in a way that stands out, or for it to make sense that they do, because if we've got 50 clones in a room, how do you expect me to believe one of them's a leader? Yeah, they're clones of each other. Yeah. They're all the same. But somehow Filoni made that work. And I just wanted to hear Rex take orders, argue against orders, agree with the orders, and then carry out I loved it. I loved Rex. He was great. Also, I thought it was great. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, it's unrelated. You first.
I remember after episode 2, when we had the Attack of the Clones film, I remember talking. I don't remember who I was talking with, but talking with one of my nerd friends and saying, if that's what the Clone Wars are, if it's the Clone Wars because there's a bunch of clones in the army, as opposed to other theories of what the Clone Wars had meant back in the old EU days, I'd really just love to see it as a military film, as a film about soldiers. And while there's lots of lightsaber swinging in the Clone Wars, I think one of the things that Filoni does that no one had done is Filoni does episodes that aren't at all about the Jedi.
Right.
We get episodes that are about the clones. We get episodes that are occasionally about politics. We occasionally get episodes that are about Jar Jar. And
we do.
We get episodes that are about scum and villainy, And I loved seeing the breadth of the Star Wars genre explored, where we can have a military drama featuring Rex, where we can have a Western, where we can do an episode that is just the Seven Samurai, where we can do all of those things. And I think Rex is such a wonderfully empathetic character for exploring the harshness of being a soldier especially in that kind of army that's composed of clones who are, at least to some minds, going to be expendable. Right.
And my point was, I was very excited to hear the revelation of the inhibitor chips, and to be shown through the entirety of the series, and then have the humanity of the clones taken away there at the end was powerful. And it could be argued that by giving the same backstory to every member of the military, you're cheapening it. But I loved that there was a backstory. I loved it.
Yeah.
It felt like a cop-out when we first found out that every stormtrooper was a clone. So what you're telling me is there's really 45 people that believe all of this, and then just an army of clones is what you're telling me. But to add some humanity to that, and then watch it be taken away during Order 66 was really powerful to me. I really enjoyed that. Again,
I saw
lore building.
I saw a comment that when you look at the way that the different Jedi interact with the clones throughout the animated series, you've got, one of the very early episodes, you've got a team of clones stuck on a disabled ship with Plo Koon. And You've got another one where Yoda's got a troop of clones. And in both of those, Yoda and Plo Koon go out of their way to present, you're an individual, and you're an individual, and you're an individual. They treat them very humanly. And over again, we see that with Plo Koon, is that the way he treats his clone troopers, the clone troopers assigned to him, with, I think, Wolf is his clone commander. He treats them like people. He treats them like brothers in arms. I mean, it's that very Band of Brothers-esque thing. And you see that in lots of ways with the different major Jedi. You only see a couple of Jedi who are really harsh in their treatment of the clones. And then when you look at the Order 66 montage in Episode 3, it's not suddenly these faceless beings turned on the Jedi. It's suddenly these friends turned on the Jedi.
Yeah.
And it's just so... It takes what that moment's meant to make you feel and actually makes you feel it.
Yeah, and that was also very well portrayed in the finale when Ahsoka takes Rex's helmet off. And after he has said, those soldiers down there, my brothers, they will die or kill for this order. And she takes his helmet off and he's shedding tears over it was a great, like, hearing, as we just discussed, the weight behind the term brother that was given through Obi-Wan and Anakin, to have that same weight put behind Rex talking about the fellow clones was something that the show had demonstrated for us for 7 seasons and then took away, which, is high drama. It's great. It's very well done. And then there's obviously Ahsoka. Arguably, for me, one of the most alienatingly bratty characters ever conceived, who by the end, living in an apartment by myself, I was prepared to jump off of the couch cheering out loud for. We're obviously attracted to characters of action, right? Like decisiveness one way or another is something that we look for. But I was really drawn to the fact that she grows from being just a character of action into a character of conviction, and then most impressively, a character of responsibility, which is a full arc, and it's the most we can ask for from any story, I think, is a character who carries the weight of their responsibility. And I thought she was executed beautifully.
I think so too. And I think, and again, I'm assuming intentionality to this because I have a great respect for Dave Filoni as a filmmaker, but I think what I have noticed in thinking about it in these terms, getting ready for this, is, we talk about Anakin and Obi-Wan as foils for each other in the way that they approach, and Ahsoka has, Ventress and Maul and these other characters as foils. But I think what's really cool is Ahsoka shows us why neither Anakin nor Obi-Wan are quite right in the end. Because Anakin is blinded by his own overconfidence, by his own pride in his very true, very real greatness. But that moment, you underestimate my power. That's Anakin's thesis, is everyone underestimates my power and I'm going to prove my power over and over again. Whereas Obi-Wan's kind of blinded to things by his absolute faith in the Jedi. He never really lets himself doubt that maybe the Jedi have really screwed things up in some way. And Ahsoka gets just the right amount of both of them to see the flaw in the Jedi, but also to see the flaw in that rashness, so that she ends up in this sort of serene center, which actually I think brings up an interesting thing, because we know that there's going to be an Ahsoka series now, and she's played a role in Rebels, but not as the main character. And I guess the question is, where is there for that character to go? And I'm really interested to see how that question is answered. But we come to such a very nice, finely balanced point with that character by the end of the Clone Wars, that I'm interested to know where can you continue to evolve that character? And I'm very interested to see how that question is answered. I don't know how it will be. But
So now, what I know about the Ahsoka show, again, Filoni, everything I saw said that it was to be a mini series, so it's going to be like a limited series.
I think that I believe that is correct. Yeah.
Which I think should fit. We can see maybe, and again, who are we to ever assume we know what Filoni's thinking?
Sure.
But if nothing else, it would be interesting to see the travel from here to there, if not personal growth any farther, to fill in some more of those missing gaps.
Yeah. The assumption that I understand is that the Ahsoka series will fill in the aftermath of Rebels. Rebels stops us in a place where Ahsoka is clearly off on a mission with one of the other characters from Rebels. That's clearly referenced in her appearance in The Mandalorian. And so that's obviously where we're going with the brilliantly casting Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka.
So good. Just in general.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. Have you finished The Mandalorian?
I have not. No, sir.
Okay. Well, when you see Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka, I think one thing you will notice, having watched all of it, is she gets the facial expressions right.
Yeah.
Like she gets the smile correct and the quirks of the facial expressions right, which just seems really strange to see a cartoon character transform.
Has there ever been a better drawn smirk though than Ahsoka's?
Nope.
That smirk
it's wonderful.
Is everything.
Yeah.
It's
her
so
facial
good.
expressions are outstanding. It's brilliant. Yeah. I mean, we've been giving a lot of credit to voice acting, but again, the visual artists creating these things are really, I think, what sell the show. You've got to have those voice actors, but it is at the end, it is animation, and so it is the animators. And in season 7, it's the fight between Ahsoka and Maul is mocapped.
Interesting.
Yeah, they brought back in the stunt actor who played Maul originally. Ray Park.
Yep. I'm a nerd too, y'all.
Yeah, and
I met him.
Brought in a stunt woman to play Ahsoka, and had them motion capture that fight, and then obviously kind of exaggerated the movements to play into the Force. But there was a great clip I saw on YouTube I think it was on the Clone Wars page, where it was Sam Witwer and Ashley Eckstein watching them play, go through the choreography. Like they were standing in the booth watching them go through the choreography on the green screen, and you can just see Sam Witwer nerding out. Yeah, like at one point he goes, "Holy crap, that's Darth Maul!" Like it's just that's
awesome.
Wonderful. The joy to think that the actors have in this is evident.
Which we'll go into that next. The where are they now, which I didn't do for everyone.
Sure.
Because boy, what a cast, and what a cast that did an awful lot. Speaking Ashley Eckstein, she is the only actress to have ever voiced Ahsoka in any animation or games, which I find just remarkable. That's what she's been doing. That's where she is now, with the exception of also having been in the new Netflix She-Ra.
Yes, that was the other thing. I was seeing that almost all of her filmography is Disney, and then that. Yep.
Which, how do you not jump at that opportunity? Sam Witwer, who was, as we previously explained, the voice for Maul, has recently appeared in Supergirl as Brainiac 5.
Oh.
He's been on another thing I've never gotten into, Riverdale, but good for him, because boy, is that show big. I know him first appearing in Smallville, and then he had a sci-fi show.
I remember you being really into Smallville, but I don't remember seeing it.
Loved Smallville. Then he was on a sci-fi show, the American adaptation of Being Human, where he played a vampire. It's the story of a vampire, a ghost, and a werewolf being roommates.
I did know that one.
Yeah, it was good. And then his introduction to the world of Star Wars, where he is currently residing comfortably, doing voices for everything Star Wars, was in the Force Unleashed series as Star Killer.
That's right. Yeah.
Which he did the facial work. It was him that the character was modeled after, as well as the voice. And then, we've got other actors that have continued on. D. Bradley Baker, who did the voice of all clone troopers for 106 episodes. Amazingly, still in the world. And then, boy, is there one busy person who was involved in this show, and that's Dave Filoni. What is he? I don't even know his full dance card. What has he got going?
Since then, it's been... Well, I mean, he is now essentially the Kevin Feige for Star Wars TV. So, Kevin Feige kind of had the role of showrunner for the whole Marvel cinematic universe.
Right.
Filoni kind of has that job for Star Wars TV. And has run now the follow-up series to Clone Wars Rebels, the follow-up series to that. Well, I guess not so much follow-up series, but the series that followed after that, Resistance, the
he did
the
Bad
Mandalorian.
Batch, right?
He's done the Bad Batch. The Mandalorian he's an executive producer on. He's not a showrunner for it, but he's an executive producer there, and actually an actor in
Is he?
The Mandalorian. He is. You've watched through season 1?
Uh-huh.
You know the prison break episode?
Mm-hmm.
He is the lead X-Wing pilot who shows up at the end.
Perfect cameo to be put in, to be an X-Wing
and
pilot.
In fact, all the X-Wing pilots in that scene are writers on the show.
Outstanding.
So, I mean, come say a few lines, sit in this cockpit on a green screen, and say a few lines, and now you're in Star Wars. A whole bunch of voice actors from the Clone Wars have actually made little background cameos in Mandalorian and in a few other things. Like the actor playing Anakin, I believe. Yeah, the actor playing Anakin, Matt Lantner, is, I think, a New Republic soldier in one of the episodes. I think he's a New Republic soldier in one of the episodes, but I don't recall which episode. And the actor who did all the Clone Trooper, D. Bradley Baker, is a cameo in somewhere in Mandalorian as well. He's brought a bunch of the voice actors from there in to just say that you've been on screen in Star Wars and that kind of thing. Which is real cool. And he's, of course, working on Mandalorian season 3, which is kind of somewhere out there, but also the Book of Boba Fett, the Ahsoka spinoff, the Kenobi spinoff. He's kind of everywhere in Star Wars. He is now the Star Wars guy.
What's fascinating?
Is basically his job.
Is your comparison to the Kevin Feige is for all the negativity that the Star Wars universe has thrown around, especially since the Disney acquisition, all the fan base having gotten very hateful of things. Dave Filoni seems like he's the guy that we have to thank, and not the guy to blame for anything. Everything he's touched has done right by Star Wars and grown it wonderfully.
Yeah. He is the actual, now the official executive producer and creative director for Lucasfilm Animation.
Rad. Good for him.
He is.
One thing of impact to thank Dave Filoni for sure, as we discussed, one of the reasons why this show impacted so well and has lasted so well is that Ahsoka is Star Wars' first female lead. and that was of great importance to him, that to push her so far forward and to give so much strength, not only of personality, but of force strength to a female lead. And I think that has done wonders for where the Star Wars universe has gone. And The Mandalorian has been another great example of that. Almost being completely carried by its female characters at several points.
Yeah.
And that's...
I think one thing that he does really well with that really impresses me, is... I mean, this is just true of creating heroic characters in general, actually, regardless of gender. It's so easy when you've got a character that you just love, the way he obviously loves the character of Ahsoka. It's so easy to make the character perfect. It's so easy to fall into that. I'm gonna make this is the new character. This is the new face of Star Wars from my perspective. And so obviously this character must be, and she's not. She's insecure in ways. She's flawed in ways. She makes mistakes. She does dumb things. She gets consequences when she does dumb things. She gets people in trouble when she does dumb things. And I think that's just what makes her such a strong character, is that she is as imperfect as the characters around her.
Right. And she was, at the time, the most three-dimensional of characters, because we saw the most growth and change from her. Maybe still, because I think that we see the most growth in characters from this show and evolution that we do in the Star Wars universe, and she is front and center of that. Final thoughts here, Philip, as we are maybe for the first time in us ever making things together going to wrap up right around an hour. Final thoughts, takeaways from Clone Wars.
Well, I'm going to be real unprofessional and switch my headphones right now because my earbuds are about to die.
Perfect. Well, as he does that, I will tell you, for me personally, I'm grateful for having had an opportunity to go on this adventure. I'm glad that I did. It took a thing that I love and just deepened it, fleshed it out, gave me more. I love Star Wars so much that I can't have too much of it, and it did a great job of making more. And I'm honestly maybe even glad that I slept on it, because this was a great adventure to get to go on. I'm excited for my nephew to come over and this to be one of our binge watches, where I get to know what's happening and have those knowing looks over as he develops his new love for more Star Wars. Philip?
I really appreciate what Dave Filoni has done to Star Wars, not just in the Clone Wars, but in the other things that he's done. As mentioned, I have a child now, which I didn't when I got into Star Wars because, well, I was very young. And I have a daughter. And so it became important to me in ways that I could not have anticipated to have strong female characters like Ahsoka, like Hera and Sabine in Rebels, like the numerous significant females that we get in The Mandalorian. Rose has been Sabine from Rebels for Halloween. If she can ever figure out how to do the headpiece, she will absolutely turn herself into Ahsoka Tano one day. She just hasn't quite figured out how to manage that, and not being a costumer, I also don't know how to do that for her. But this is her Star Wars, and that's like Luke Skywalker has never been her Star Wars,
right?
And so, when you have the throwbacks to Luke Skywalker, or she's never going to be interested in Solo.
Right.
Apart from what I think about it as a film, she's never going to be interested in that. It doesn't matter to her who Han Solo was, where Han Solo came from. Han Solo is not her iteration of the myth of Star Wars. It's Sabine Wren and Hera Syndulla and Ahsoka Tano and Bo-Katan, another brilliantly voiced character with Katie Sackhoff because I like Battlestar Galactica. And interestingly, the only Clone Wars character who has morphed into the live action who is played by her voice actor.
Yeah.
Which is
with the most geometrically drawn hair of any character ever.
She does.
They fit together like puzzle pieces. It's amazing.
So I just really appreciate what that has done. But honestly, I am far more excited about anything that is happening in Star Wars TV that Dave Filoni is involved in than I am about any future movies we might get. I mean, the whole, future High Republic movies, things like that. That might be great. I'm not saying it will be bad. I'm not gonna judge it at no information, but I'm not in the least bit excited. I just maybe really great, and maybe when I see it, I'll get it. When I see previews for it, that's something like that. It'll get me excited. But right now, I'm excited for knowing the rest of Ahsoka's story, or maybe just the next chapter. I don't know if it'll be the rest of it. For knowing what happens with Ezra Bridger and Sabine Wren, with knowing what's coming with Thrawn, because they've already talked about casting Thrawn for live action stuff. So I love what Dave Filoni has done to Star Wars. I love having sympathy for villains, and I never did. Even Darth Vader in the original trilogy, I know was like, oh, it's so sad when he dies, but he's been Darth Vader this whole time. And I'm sad that Luke is sad, and I empathize with Luke. But there was never anything about the weird bald man that they took out of that suit that I went, oh, he's human.
Buddy.
Like, that was maybe if I'd been older, it would have, but it never did that. Never did that. But Ventress and Maul and Anakin in Clone Wars, feeling that for the villains is so wonderful to me in fiction, and especially seeing where Ventress's story ends up in the books and where Maul's story ends up in Rebels. Also, Dave Filoni has created is responsible for, at least in some degree, my two favorite Star Wars lightsaber fights are both in his animation. It's Ahsoka versus Maul, and then it's a fight involving Maul in Rebels that you haven't seen Rebels, and I really want you to watch Rebels, and I'm not going to ruin this moment for you because it's like the best Star Wars thing to ever happen.
We might have a future episode on our hands.
Yeah. But me and my wife watched the Ahsoka Maul fight in the throne room just with mouths open, just staring at the screen because it's so beautiful in addition to being kick ass. I mean, it's just gorgeous.
Right.
So, I was a fan of Star Wars, but I love Dave Filoni Star Wars.
From two guys who like being nerds, love Star Wars, and like talking about things together, and now on the internet. Thanks, everybody that made Clone Wars. We had a blast with it. It's mattered a lot to a lot of people, and as Philip has just demonstrated, again, to generations of people. So Dave Filoni, obviously at the front and center, but to the cast.
My daughter wrote him a letter when she finished Rebels.
Did she really?
She wrote a letter to him when she finished Rebels because she wanted to know what happened to Ezra and Ahsoka.
That's awesome.
I don't know if she even remembers that she sent that, but she sent him a letter at Skywalker Ranch because she wanted to know, are you ever going to tell us what happens? Because I want to know what happens.
Mr. Filoni, please write Rose back. She won't tell anybody except her dad, and he'll tell me.
Yeah.
Everyone involved in the animation, the voice work, the art direction. Thank you guys for a great experience.
Yeah.
We had a blast, and we appreciate your work through and through. Philip, we just recorded our first episode of I Never Got Into That.
Huzzah!
Look at us making stuff, dude. What else do you make that you want to tell people about?
If you would like to see more of me and Colin, you can on the YouTubes. at youtube.com/thegeekpantheon. We're both on a live play D&D show there called Kyber Shards that I GM and Colin is a player in. It's Colin's first D&D experience. And I'm having a blast with it, and maybe you'll like it too. So if you like us and or D&D, you might find that interesting. So check it out.
Right on. I stream every Tuesday right now, and then whenever Restaurant Life allows me to. You can find me if you'd like to hang out, talk about this, talk about anything. We do a lot of just chatting over there. Twitch.tv/sorrybtr. The O in there is a 0. Feel free to stop on by. You can find us on Twitter at INGIT. I never got into that. Feel free to follow us on there, tweet at us, let us know any kind of suggestions. Join the Discord. It is a baby Discord, but join it. If you're listening on audio, thank you so much. I appreciate you finding us and hanging out through this. If you're watching on YouTube, we appreciate you just as much. Wherever you're at, guys, if you had a good time, please write us a comment, leave a review, maybe a thumbs up. Anything helps. We just like talking to each other. We like getting to know people that are like-minded, and we like finding things to be positive about in the world. So appreciate you guys. You got anything else?
I think you done it.
All right. Thanks so much for hanging out and getting into it with us. We'll see y'all next time.